Today, I'm actually going to work off of some content that we've already created to show you how to recreate it. So I'm going to search for our community content. You'll see we have these different sections. So anytime you want to get organized, you can always create a new section by clicking this plus sign down here. It's a nice way to basically create folders for yourself to stay organized. Okay, so here's the card, the same one that you see here in Candu. Today, I'm going to show you how to recreate it. So we'll have it up here just as inspiration as we build. To build content in the editor, the first thing I want to note is that we have this palette that you just saw me playing around with here. These are all the options of UI components that you can add to the screen. And as you saw, all you do is click and drag onto the screen to start creating. Over here on the right, we have what we call the toolbox. So the toolbox will change depending on what element you have selected, but this is really where you make a lot of the customizations to make things look the way you want them to. And one other thing I'll note that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on today, but Candu is not meant to be like an iframe. No one should know that you built this content in Candu. It should look like your engineering team built it. And so the way you do that is actually to go in. We have the Selfserve style guide where you can add your fonts. We use a custom font that we've uploaded. You can add all of your brand colors, and then those will flow into things like your custom buttons, the badges that you use. Any element that's within Candu will be available to you in this style guide to customize so that everything that you publish with Candu looks like it was created by your team, not by us. So now that we have those caveats out of the way, let's get started on building. So this is actually basically a confluence of a bunch of nested layouts to create this really nice structure of having the 4 images in the corners and having a little bit of text and a button in the middle. So I created one layout, which will be our overall structure that we created in it to stretch across, go up and down. And then I want to add another layout. It's going to create just this top section of these 2 nested layouts. So I'll drag another layout. We're doing a lot of nesting here. And I can also use my arrow keys to navigate around. So once you have things like nested layouts and you're trying to figure out where you are on the screen, it's really useful to start using your arrow keys. So this layout, I want to have 2 pieces of content on opposite sides of my layout, and I want it to be pinned to the top. So I'm going to hit start. I also want those content pieces. So when you think about a Google Doc, for instance, every piece of content that you add adds one under the other under the other. In this particular case, I want my images to be side by side, not one on top of the other. So what I do is change my content direction from top to bottom to row. And again, so vertically, I want everything at the start, and horizontally, I actually want space between. So my 2 images end up on either side of the page. And then these have really specific sizes. So what I'll do is add 2 more little layouts to hold them. And I don't want these to grow. So that's why they're taking up the whole space. I actually want each of them to be set specifically at 30%. And the reason I'm using percentages, you can use pixels here too, but the reason I'm using percentages is that, as you've seen here, this card gets really small. And if I make the page smaller, it'll get even smaller. And so I don't want those images to be a set number of pixels. I want them to be a percentage of the card. So I'll set this one to 30, and then I'll duplicate it. And you'll see, because I set the other layout to be space between, this one goes to the end. What I want to do is actually add images to each of these. Once I've added an image, there's actually a few different ways that you can set this up. So if you have a link that you prefer to use, you can plug that link in here. You can also upload, if I had this content on my desktop, I could just drag it literally right onto this page. Or every time you upload media to Candu, we save it for you so you don't have to continue to find it on your desktop. So if I hit upload here, it'll open up my media library. I conveniently already have all these little images here as SVGs. So I'll select this one since it's the upper left image. And then, oh, look, it's tiny. So here, over in my toolbox on the right, I have width and height that I can set. And again, similar to the layout that we were looking at before, I can set it in pixels or percentages. So I want this image to take up 100% of that 30% layout that I put it in. So I'm going to change that to percentage and just type in 100 here. And then I will do the same thing over here. Again, you can use any brand images that you want in this type of thing, but we love these little circles. They're part of our brand. So put this one in here. And again, I'll want to set it to 100%. So now I have the top part set. The next thing I need to do is add this text in here. So I'm going to drag that to the bottom of my layout, and you'll see this green line shows me where everything's going. So I don't want it there. I don't want it there. I want it here. And I'm lazy, so I'm just gonna copy all of this text, but you can type whatever you want in here. Okay, so highlight and paste. Next, I don't want this left aligned. I want it center aligned, so I just move that over there. And I want this button, so I can drag a button element here. And again, I want to drop that down below. I don't need it to take up the whole width, so I will hit in the element alignment over here on the toolbox. I'll hit center. And as you can see, ultimately, we're going to make the background of this whole thing purple. So I'm actually going to make this a green button. These colors here that you're seeing will pull from that style guide that we looked at before. So we've set up this green color as our secondary color. If you want to add the button, you click this little orange modal button that pops up at the bottom, and you can add, in my case, I'm going to have it email support. So now I've created the top half of my card. And again, as you can see with these ones, they're all pinned to the very top and the very bottom. So we actually want to remove some margin and padding. So as you can see in my new duplicate, there's a little bit of extra space between it and the edges. So all I need to do is click this little lock, hit 0 here. And again, I'll use my arrow keys to navigate up, hit 0 here. And then finally in this view, I also want it to be 0, a little hidden. And now I have what I consider an ideal layout. So I will duplicate it, save myself some time, and drag the whole thing down to the bottom. And all I need to do now is set it to vertically be at the bottom and update my images. Which again, each of these will need to be at the bottom or vertically at the bottom. So take these new images, get the bottom facing ones. Again, I'll update it to be 100%, update this other image too. There we go. And then this one, again, we'll update to be these pretty purple concentric rings. The last thing, select this image. And again, we'll set it to 100%. And then we basically created our entire view. All we need to do is change the background color to purple and change our text to white, and we'll actually have created this entire thing in about 10 minutes, which is awesome. And then our final step today will be walking through how you actually install Candu into your page, which seems intimidating, I know, but is actually really easy. There we go. And then our final step will be to get to this overall total view of the whole thing, the thing we originally nested everything into. And the last thing we want to do is we want to remove the last bits of padding so everything sits really nicely on the edges. And then we want to change the background color from transparent. So use my arrow keys to get to that top view. And then I just paste in this color. And now we can't read the text, so I'm going to update that really quickly to be white. So instead of default, we'll do all white text. The other nice thing is you'll note, like if we highlight text, for instance, anything, you can always add links to your text. You can also make it look like a little code block. If that's something you're adding, you can underline it, italicize it, bold it, all of the usual things. But this looks great to me, so I'm excited about that. So that we don't publish 2 of them, I'm going to delete the original. And now I'm noticing that I get to the top level, get the whole view, and I need to change my button text. So I just highlight that, exclamation point, and I've created our card. So the next thing that I'll do is actually to hit the publish button. So I want this to go live. If you've created additional user segments, those will all be listed here. So you can always decide what user segments you want to publish new content to. You don't have to publish to everyone all the time. So I'm going to hit publish. Awesome. Right now I'm just publishing to the ether because this hasn't been installed. But what I'll do now is actually go in and start the installation process. So that starts by going to settings, and you'll see this embed tab down here on the left. And this gives you all the instructions you need to add Candu to your site. So if you're starting from scratch, if you haven't installed Candu anywhere ever, you'll start by copying this entire code block. And we really recommend, if you're using anything like WordPress or anything that allows you to add your own elements, I really recommend adding a div with an ID. That would be my best practices. In the case of our community site, we're not allowed to add elements like that. So we'll actually be creating our own selector. In our community, we go to, for me, it's under settings and code snippets. As you can see, as I noted, because this set is already installed, we already have some of the code snippets there. So in my case, I actually only need to copy this little render content section. But again, if you're doing this for the first time, you'll need all of this code. So I'll go under the one piece of Candu content that's already installed, and I'm going to add this. The one thing to note, like I said, best practice is to use the selector and add your own div. We can't do that here. So I've uninstalled this since I last did this. So I'll refresh and you'll see that this guy goes away until we hit save. But what I need to do is find a class or an ID of something on this page that I can pin Candu to so that Candu knows where it's supposed to appear. And so in order to do that, I go right click and then click inspect. And I want to find the most specific piece of content that I can find here where I want Candu to go. So sidebar content is a little broader than what I'm looking for. I'm not quite sure where it will land. So I'm going to open that div and see if there's something a little bit more specific that I can go with. And I think this will work the best is this homepage sidebar. So I'm just going to copy that. And you'll note here that it says div class. Like I said, ideally what you get is a div with an ID. The reason for that is that an ID is a unique identifier. And so Candu will show up exactly where you want it to. You'll know that it's only going to be in one place. Classes also work fine, but there's a possibility that a class persists on multiple pages or across different parts of your page. So Candu content could show up in multiple places hypothetically. Just something worth noting and checking. So I've copied this class of homepage sidebar. Classes have a different symbol in front of them. They have a period instead of a pound sign. So I'm going to do selector is quote period homepage sidebar. And that all looks good to me. I will hit save changes. We're in good shape. And then if I hit refresh, actually X out of this, you should see all of our Candu content appearing here. And there it is. You'll note now that it's a little bit crunched up at the top. So if I go back into Candu, look, it just merges too closely with that button. If I go back into Candu and hit my arrow keys all the way up till I'm in the document, I want to add some margin at the top. So that'll just push my content down a little bit. So I'm going to try adding margin of 16. That looks nice. If I hit publish, or actually, I'm going to refresh it really quickly just to make sure. And then I'm going to hit publish. You'll see that I now have more space between the button and the content that I created. So finish this out. And now we'll have a little bit of space between our card and our button, and everything goes to the edge. It looks like it belongs there, but secretly we all know that we created it with Candu. I hope that was a helpful overview of the types of things you can do with Candu. Obviously, we're building this on our community site, but you can use Google Tag Manager to add it to an existing SaaS application. You can use WordPress if that's something that you work with. We also have integrations with things like Shopify, Wix, basically any website builder that allows you to add HTML to the page, you can use Candu on. So yeah, I'd love to see you test it out. We love hearing about examples of what people are doing. And as you can see, you can go through the process once you get the hang of it of creating content and installing it in less than 30 minutes. So please let us know if you need any help, but thank you so much for attending our session today. Thanks so much.